In 2011, I was lucky to have the opportunity to go to the home of Jimmy BAIN. We were filming our series Metal Evolution, and we sat in his backyard in LA. And we talked about a lot of things, but the one thing that was really important for us to talk about was, of course, the Rainbow Rising record. You know, people talk about the early Sabbath records and Zeppelin records and Purple records, but I really think that people forget just how powerful Rainbow Rising was for its time. A combination of BAIN and Blackmore, and of course, the sound of Ronnie Dio's soaring voice. This wasn't like anything else at that time. So a real underrated record, and also with Jimmy, a real underrated bass player and creative force in Rainbow and the other projects he did throughout his life. So here's a clip from my chat with Jimmy BAIN.
Okay, we're speeding.
Everyone got that?
Yeah.
Okay, Jimmy BAIN, take one. You know, this show is about the evolution of hard rock and metal music. What do you think is important about that Rainbow Rising record in that development of the music?
Well, we only had 6 songs and 6 tracks on the record. It seemed like not too many songs, but from judging from the popularity of the thing, it seems to still have stood the test of time, and still is a pretty. Everybody likes it to this day. You know, so I think it was just exactly what people were looking for at the time. You know, it was another thing. The timing was perfect for the band too. We just kind of hit it right in the head as far as timing went, as far as the style went, the music and the whole vibe of the band. You know, and we had Ronnie's voice as well, which was not too shabby.
What made the record heavy, do you think?
I think it was the material. You know, the songs were really, they were really hardcore songs, and when they were written, they seemed to have that edge, and when we recorded them, they had that nastiness that, you know, really good metal should have. I think it has that edge to it that everybody's playing flat out. You know, it was just, you know, you got that in the recording, and of course when the band played live as well. You know, it was cool.
I know everyone's got Rainbow Rising t-shirts on now.
Sure.
I keep seeing, you know.
I wish I could get one. That'd be cool. Be cool.
The heaviness of that Rainbow Rising record, was it a conscious decision to do something that was heavy? Were you guys really interested in doing something that was kind of going to really up the ante?
I'm not sure. I think it just turned out that way. With the songs just seemed to have that edge to them. You know, the Stargazer and Light in the Black were heavier than anything that I'd heard, you know, up until that point. So I thought it just seemed to be right at the time. I'm not sure if it was a conscious thing or whether it just happened that way, but we did get it in the performance. If there was any lightness to the songs, they lost the lightness when we went in the studio and recorded them. You know, it's just it went bye-bye.
And tell me about Ronnie's voice on that Rainbow Rising record. What was Ronnie bringing to the sound of the band?
So much. I mean, the guy, I'd never seen anybody perform like that at any time in the studio before that. You know, it was just phenomenal. He just took it to another level, or 2 or 3 levels higher than anybody else. You know, and with the heaviness of the bass, drums, and guitar and keyboards, his voice just slotted right on top. It was just, it couldn't get any heavier. You know, it was like, okay, we got it. You know.
Presumably had to really belt to get himself heard over.
Right,
you
but
guys.
he had the pipes to just, you know, sit right on top of that heaviness, and it didn't matter how heavy you got with the rhythm section or the guitar or whatever, his voice just slotted right on top. It was great.
Thinking about that early 80s time where we now have bands like Maiden and Motorhead, and we get bands like Saxon and Diamond Head, and it's been called this new wave of British heavy metal. Can you take me back to that time in your memories of how much things had changed by the 80s?
Well, I was in a band called Wild Horses at the time, and we got signed to EMI at the same time, I think, as Maiden got signed to EMI, 1980, 81, around that time. And there was a big buzz about all these bands that were kind of just coming up. We got to play a lot. We played a lot of festivals together in England. I was living there at the time, and it was a good time. You could see that there was a real buzz amongst the musicians themselves, that they were on to something. They didn't quite know where it was going to go or how far it would go, but they kind of had this, there was a kind of optimism. It just, everybody felt that there was something good about to happen, and sure enough, it did. Everybody had a good a good run at it from what we can gather. Anyway, Maiden certainly are still going at it, did really well.
You mentioned, you used a great word, optimism. Early 80s in England, I mean, I guess what we're trying to figure out is, why did we see this explosion of bands at this time? Why were people optimistic about this music, do you think?
Who knows? I mean, because it's very much, from what happened later on with the punk thing that came shortly afterwards, it kind of was very short-lived. But at that time, everybody thought, well, for one thing, the bands got record deals. I mean, my band got a record deal, Maiden got a record deal. We were happy just to be able to go in the studio and record some songs and get some kind of, product out there so we could move on to something new. So that was great, and just getting a record deal. So it felt good that the labels were interested in that kind of music for a change, because normally they would be only in Britain interested in if you were top 10, top 40 kind of stuff. They weren't interested in heavy rock music per se,
Do you remember seeing this, people talk about this sort of new army of fans? I mean, you think of the denim vests with the patches, that's what we think of when we think of heavy metal.
Denim jackets
that came
with the patches,
from that time. Did you see that happening?
Absolutely, yeah. With Dio especially, I mean, 83 we came over, did Monsters of Rock, and the patches were everywhere. It was just a sea of Saxon and Maiden and Priest and everybody. And then we were quickly, as we became successful, the Dio ones in red were on there as well. It was a sea of denim. It looked great too. I thought it was cool.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Okay, good.
Appreciate your time.
Great. Thank
so
you very much, guys. Hope it wasn't too boring.
No.
You got enough stuff there.